Good morning. So to begin, I'm going to start with something a little bit different today, and I'm going to need a volunteer to come on up here with me. Either someone comes on up or I volunteer somebody, so. Anybody? Oh, we got Angie coming on up. Everybody, this is my sister-in-law, Angie. Round of applause for Angie. She lives for this stuff.
No, I don't. I actually hate it. I get nervous.
So, to start, here's what I'm going to do.
Okay.
You're going to have two choices.
Okay.
The first choice is what you're going to have. Well, both choices are going to be what you have for lunch today.
What am I going to have for lunch?
Yep, so here's option number one. I have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich it's an Uncrustable. It's been living in the bottom of my freezer for who knows how long. I pulled it out this morning. So here's option number one for you. You might just want to take it now, but we'll set it here next to the communion for just a moment. The other option is a gift card for the best restaurant in all of Sandusky. Objectively so, Bob Evans.
Yes.
So you have two options. You have the dingy Smucker's Uncrustable that's lived in the bottom of my freezer for who knows how long, or this gift card for Bob Evans. But you have to eat whatever it is for lunch today.
So I have to go there today?
You have to go there today.
So if I eat that, that's my lunch?
Yeah, and that's all you get.
I'm going Bob Evans.
Bob Evans, okay. That's fine. All right, so that is yours. That is the end of our game.
Okay.
Yep, so this was a fun game.
Are you going to go to lunch with me?
Oh, sure. Am I invited? So, that is the opening for our sermon today. Seems a little odd, doesn't it? Raise your hand if you eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches on a weekly basis. Weekly basis? I do. I probably eat them 3 or 4 times a week. Pack them in my lunch, maybe a midnight snack. Maybe just like a little piece of bread with some peanut butter to hold me over between meals. Yeah, maybe raise your hand if you take like a cold cut sandwich for lunch to work pretty consistently. Maybe like a ham and cheese or something like that. So the sandwich or the peanut butter sandwich represents everyday life. It represents the mundane. It represents the ordinary. We can all relate to eating a sandwich. But oftentimes, I'll eat so many ordinary things that when you ask me, hey, what did you have for lunch this week? I can't tell you a thing. Not going to be like, I have no idea what I ate for lunch this week. But if you went out to Bob Evans or Olive Garden or maybe another restaurant and said, hey, what did you eat for lunch this week? You'll probably remember that because it was something out of the ordinary for you. So I'm going to get us started with Matthew chapter 16. So Matthew chapter 16. I'm going to be working through much of this chapter. I will jump around just a little bit today. But Matthew chapter 16, I'm out of the NLT version today, so it may look a little bit different. I did not have time this morning to get it pulled up on our slides, so it will not be on the screen for you, so I apologize for that. But starting in Matthew chapter 16, verse 1, it says, one day the Pharisees and the Sadducees came to test Jesus, demanding that he show them a miraculous sign from heaven to prove his authority. So they're looking for a miraculous. They were looking for a sign that was out of the ordinary. They were looking for something memorable. They were looking for something that stood out. And it's kind of interesting. Imagine following Jesus, seeing the incredible things that he did, but even seeing just the day-to-day things. And you're wanting something more. And in verse 2, he says, you know the saying, red sky at night means fair weather tomorrow. Red sky in the morning means foul weather all day. You know how to interpret the weather signs in the sky, but you don't know how to interpret the signs of the times. Only an evil, adulterous person or a generation would demand a miraculous or an out-of-the-ordinary sign. But the only sign I will give them is the sign of the prophet Jonah. Then Jesus left them and went away. So we have these people that are demanding something so out of the ordinary to prove to them something. We all want things out of the ordinary in life. We get bored with the ordinary. We get bored with the mundane. We all think about, and throughout our lives, what are the things that stand out to you? It's always the mountaintops and never kind of the valleys. The big things in life. When we do our New Year's recap, I put one on Facebook the past couple of weeks, and it was like, what were the highlights from this year? It never included the peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Maybe it didn't include a restaurant, but it definitely included the fun things, the out of the ordinary. What are the highlights of this year? It doesn't include the things that just happen day in and day out. This is what the Pharisees and the Sadducees were demanding of Jesus. Give us something out of the ordinary. In verse 5, it says, "Later, after they crossed to the other side of the lake, the disciples discovered that they had forgotten to bring any bread. 'Watch out,' Jesus warned them. 'Beware of the yeast of the Pharisees and the Sadducees.'" Verse 7, it says, "At this they began to argue with one another, because they hadn't brought any bread." Jesus knew what they were saying. So he says, "You of little faith, why are you arguing with one another about having no bread? Don't you understand even yet? Don't you remember the 5,000 that I fed with 5 loaves and the baskets left over that you picked up? Or the 4,000 I fed with the 7 loaves and the large baskets left over? Why can't you understand that I'm not talking about bread? So again, I say, beware of the yeast of the Pharisees." Then at last they understood that he wasn't speaking about yeast in bread, but about the deceptive teachings of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. It's so silly sometimes when we read scripture and we come across passages like this, where Jesus, to us, it seems so obvious that there's a moral teaching that's being taught. And sometimes the knucklehead disciples are like, man, he really wanted us to bring bread, and we dropped the ball, we forgot the bread. As if he needed bread. He shared about the miraculous stories, and he shared about all of these things that he's already done. And they didn't quite get it. But it says, then at last they understood that he wasn't speaking about bread, but about deceptive teaching. Verse 13, it says, "When Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, 'Who do people say that the Son of Man is?' 'Well,' they replied in verse 14, 'some say John the Baptist, some say Elijah, and others say Jeremiah, or another one of the prophets.' He asked them, 'But who do you say that I am?' Simon Peter answered, 'You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God.' Jesus replied, 'You are blessed, Simon, son of John, because my Father in heaven has revealed this to you. You did not learn this from any human being. Now I say to you that you are Peter, which means rock, and upon this rock I will build my church. And all the powers of hell will not conquer it. And I will give you the keys to the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you forbid on earth will be forbidden in heaven. And whatever you permit on earth will be permitted in heaven." Then he sternly warned the disciples not to tell anyone that he was the Messiah. We all want something out of the ordinary to happen. But oddly enough, it was in this mundane, ordinary conversation with just a couple of his friends that the most out of the ordinary thing was revealed to all of humanity. It wasn't through the big sign that the Pharisees and the Sadducees wanted Jesus to give them in that moment. Instead, Jesus ended up being secluded with a few of his friends, and in the most ordinary way, probably a conversation around a table, maybe on the shore of a beach, he had this ordinary conversation where he revealed something extraordinary. oftentimes we don't see beauty in the ordinary or the mundane. We want the extraordinary.